So, someone asked me recently about my work and work called A Course in Miracles and how my work related to that. And I've also been getting lately a lot of questions about the practice of touching the shadow, which is the practice that I work with and I have developed, which actually leads to, as it were, um, the unleashing of these powers that I talk about. So there is a kind of a similarity with the work, my work, and the work of A Course in Miracles. The difference is that the work of A Course in Miracles tends to, I would say, be based very much on the Eastern concept of Christ. Um, and what is typically Western in the whole, in the idea of the Christ concept is the problem of the shadow. So that's why my approach to reaching that deeper level of consciousness where we are able to, as it were, um, connect to the wave is based on the shadow. It's actually based on going beyond the problem of the what I call the observation problem, which is the problem where I tend to experience a sense of separateness between me and the other or the world. But as I've been explaining in many of my videos, that sense of separateness is not random or not, as it were, the enemy. You see, we work with that in order to get to the deeper levels. So the first step, we need to look at this in terms of the steps, in terms of a stairway, because it's impossible to, as it were, from out of a what I would call a particle state of the self, which is the self that is experiencing itself as separate from everything, to perform these miracles. So we need to take the first steps out of the particle state before we can, as it were, reach the wave state. And what we get then is that for the first step is to become aware that of our projections and of our shadow. Um, like I would say, the first thing is to be aware of what your dreams told you the night before, and the dreams are going to, as it were, confront you with your shadow. So, for instance, if you dream that you're lost in a city and you cannot find your way, it means that by day you are way too bent on control and finding your way. You see, and the paradox means that we need to tolerate some sense of not being in control. So the shadow is going to confront the bright side with its shadow, and then in order to find that paradox, which is the paradox of what I call control yet being flexible, open. So when we deal with that, when we deal with the dreams, then we get outside of the dreams. I call that projection catching or PCing. And the PCing becomes becoming aware of our projections, and that's a process where basically you start with the easiest way. It is to realize that whatever you're perceiving is always being perceived in terms relative to the state we are in. So if we are experiencing the world as overwhelming, it's because we are in a state of depression. So we will always experience the world in opposite terms of what we are in. If we are experiencing the other as being somewhat rejecting us, it's because we are too attached. So we can play with those opposites in this sense. And when we can do that, when we can realize that in a way, then we are creating the experience of the other, because the other is being experienced in terms opposite of the state we are in, then we get that what we call that's what we call the first form of projection catching, which is a form of touching the shadow. And then you get, once you can see, this is like getting the mind becoming more of loosening the mind of the particle state of feeling completely separate, because now we're realizing that the surrounding is not separate anymore. And you see, so we start to connect what I call connecting within and without, because we need to see in small little steps that the within and the without is connected, because that's where, as it were, the miracle lies, when we can realize that we are creating what is out there. Then we get the bigger projections, because then we get that we can realize that we're projecting. For instance, a woman was telling me that about a man she remembered that was a man that would be somewhat promiscuous and would like to go from have several women at the same time, and then she would be like remembering him, and she would like be explaining to me what would be his motivation to want to have several partners at the same time, while she was at that very moment doing something very similar. And so you see, the mind, because it falls into that sense of separateness, will tend to see itself on the surrounding. And when we can catch that, we need to catch that, because we will fall under the illusion that it is out there. But now that we know this practice, we can catch ourselves. Or someone says, someone that is going often to someone else's office in an office building would go like, do you think they will think that I am coming too much here? At that moment, the person is feeling that they are coming too much. See, so when we can catch these projections, then we can become very proactive and realize that these are my own feelings, and that will tend to balance us out. That's like what I call a compass, the self compass, where the paradox is the North Star, as it were, but then becoming aware of these projections and reclaiming them, meaning that the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, meaning reclaiming that beauty and the ugliness that we see in the other. You see, that then brings us yet closer to that paradox, which is where the self that is in the wave, where that self is aware that there is no separation. And when we do that, then we start coming to the deeper levels, where we find yet, as it were, these deep connections between the mind and matter. And for instance, I was when I do this, one day I was very much, you can feel when you start to enter the wave, as it were, because you feel the flow, and and the synchronicity starts to augment, and we feel extremely connected, and as if there's some buzz, something is like just happening. We feel that we're connecting to everything and everyone by doing this work on the projections. And then I went to put my fan on, and before I touched the button, it switched on. And I've been having, once I was in my car, and my battery went totally dead, and after like 100 times of trying, literally. And then I remember in front of my son, I started to talk to it, because now I know better, although when I'm in the particle state, I would not sense that, but now I know. And I actually told it to start to help, it had to collaborate, and it started, and this is a totally, completely dead battery. So when we know this, then we know we can talk to the surrounding, we can talk to things, but we need to know this based on facts. We need to reach there on that stairway by becoming aware of these projections and recollecting them. What I call PCing, constantly being aware that we experience the world is always going to be in terms relative to the state we are in. And then we access that connection to matter in a very conscious way. And then also we connect to the bigger levels where I I've posted a video regarding the quantum community. Then we start to attract a group of people that belong to our purpose, and we start to download the purpose in our dreams first and then around us. And this purpose becomes then this synchronistic flow, this new story in our lives. And that's the way, this is the way we reconnect within and without, and we start performing these miracles again.